Hi everybody, today's 5-minute video is about choosing fiduciaries and really some tips to consider, or things to consider I should say, when choosing who those fiduciaries are going to be. So what is a fiduciary? Simply put, a fiduciary is someone you've chosen to do a job for you. It's the person that you've appointed to be the executor under your will. It's the person you've chosen to be the trustee under your trust. It's your agent under your power of attorney. It's your healthcare representative under the healthcare directive. All of those people are fiduciaries. So who is that fiduciary going to be? For married couples, it tends to be a pretty simple answer to that question. You say, my spouse knows me best. They know what my wishes are. They know how I would want to handle certain matters. So it makes the most sense to choose them. And that makes a whole lot of sense. But the next step is, what if your spouse isn't able to serve in that role for you? Or what if your spouse has now passed away? Who is going to be filling that role for you now when the spouse isn't there? Or for people who aren't married, again, it's still that same question. Who is that person that you're choosing to do all these very sensitive jobs for you? Because the agent under the power of attorney, for example, is going to be able to have really carte blanche access to your assets. So you say you want them to help you deal with your bank accounts and to pay your bills and file your taxes. So they're going to have access to a lot of really sensitive information. And also it's somewhat of a detail-oriented job doing those things, filing your taxes and making sure your money's invested properly. So one, you're going to want to make sure you choose someone you can trust to do the right thing with that level of access. Also, too, you're going to want to make sure you're choosing somebody who has the time to devote to that job. So even if you have someone who you know and love, who you think would be a really great fit, if they have a really demanding job, if they have a lot of kids with activities and things that they're going to be devoting time to, they may not just have the time to devote to being your fiduciary as well. So that's the one thing I think should be first and foremost in your mind. Pick someone who's actually going to have the time to devote to serving in that role. Second is also to appoint someone who, and I think I've referred to this earlier, is to who would act the same way you would. Particularly, this comes into play more with medical decisions. If you're to the point where you can't make medical decisions for yourself, you're going to want to choose someone who really knows what your wishes are and can still make appropriate decisions for you, similar or the same as the ones that you would have made for yourself. So you can help by, if you have specific instructions concerning end of life, for example, you can implement a living will that says, here's the things if I'm really at end of life that I do not want. So if your wishes are not to be kept alive by ventilators and feeding tubes and things of that nature, you can spell that out. So that's something that's really going to help your fiduciary know what you wanted. So that's just one step you can take in that direction as well. Another question that I get pretty commonly when I have this discussion with my clients about who to appoint as your fiduciary is, can I appoint multiple people to serve together? And the simple answer is yes, you can appoint as many people as you want to serve together. So a common example I get is mom or dad want to appoint the two kids as the power of attorney, as the executor, as the healthcare representatives. And you can absolutely do that, as I mentioned, but you run the risk of having too many cooks in the kitchen. If at some point those two people that you appointed, or three people, or how many ever people that you're looking to appoint as fiduciary, if you get to a point where those people that you've appointed don't agree, now you put it in a situation where there's a lot of conflict and maybe no decisions are being made at all. So you could have potentially now created a situation where they now have to go into the probate court to decide what needs to be done. So you've potentially complicated a matter that didn't really need to be complicated, or could have been less complicated, I should say, by simply choosing one person to be in charge. So can you appoint multiple people to serve? Absolutely, but give some thought as to the people you're considering to appoint together, and that hopefully that they are able to serve together. I've had clients say, well, my kids don't really get along now, but I'm going to appoint both of them and make them work together. And just from my experience, that never works. So really, again, give careful thought to who you're choosing if you're choosing multiple agents, because they need to be able to work together. Also, again, the time commitment issue comes into play if you've chosen multiple people, but again, one of the people you've chosen is really busy and you've said both of your agents have to work together in all things. It could simply, from a logistics standpoint, hold things up if you're waiting on somebody's signature and they just can't get to it. So again, a lot of times appointing one point person to be your agent, to be your fiduciary, works better. And then the other people that you want to be able to serve in that role for you, maybe you choose as alternates. So I choose child 1 first and I choose child 2 as a backup. So just some very important things to consider when choosing fiduciaries.